I'd like to welcome to our screen, and I wanted to tell everybody this is Reverend Dr. Dante McGilvery, and I had reached out to him a number of months ago when the idea came to me to think about. We keep talking about our what's next. How is it that we are understanding our faith moment in these political times? And I know my background is as an artist. I'm a poet and fiction writer, and I wish I was a singer. I mean, I sing, it doesn't mean I'm getting published anywhere. No recordings are live. But I thought about the importance of art in figuring out who we are called to be, and how connected we are. And so I put a call out to a number of people across the world to participate. And so we will have a number of artists and thought leaders behind the power of art and ritual in the next couple months. But our first one to answer this call is the Reverend Dante. And it's because I try to bring you in absolutely everything I do. We get to serve the great state of Arizona in a lot of different ways. And you just constantly amaze me at, one, how you find time to do stuff, two, how much you love on people despite the things that we have. It is such a model to be in the world. And then the third thing is the absolute creativity that you have in expression, whether it be self-expression or group expression. So it's awesome to have you here joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ellie. It's so good to be here. Thank you for those extremely kind words. Um, so many people ask, how do you find time to do all of those things? But I really could pose that question to you as well. But thank you all again for inviting me to this space. I'm happy to join. I'm happy to talk about this passion of mine, the arts as ministry, um, all of it. So thank you once again.
Yeah. How's your spirit? How's your soul today?
My soul is fired up. It's
Woo.
renewed. It's renewed. It's renewed. I must admit that the past month or two, I was feeling a bit of a decline in my spirit. And then I had to be reminded, Dante, you serve a great and mighty God, that this everything that's happening around you, to you, all the above, um, has happened before in history over and over again. And God is faithful through it all. God is faithful. And I'm grateful for that. And that's been enough. That, along with, of course, family, friends, when people are doing well, it reminds me God is still in control.
Yes, amen. I love that. Sometimes we forget,
We
one,
do.
our history, which is, maybe we can go into another diatribe on that. And then we also forget that we've been here before, right?
Yes.
And we have ancestors, we have elders who have taught us, who have led us through these dark moments. And so while they may be dark for some and not for others, it is still a time for us to turn to art and ritual and all of those things. And so I'm like really curious. I know, but I know that some other folks joining us today or rewatching this later may not know about how you actually got into pastoring and into your artwork. So you're in a very unique position at your university and then also some of your public work.
Yes.
So can you share a little bit about you and how you got into this?
Yes. Thank you. So to make a long story short, I will start by saying I, the work of ministry, the church, um, and art, specifically storytelling, theater, and the work of just public life, being in public, um, started with me, and all at it. It seemed to have happened all at once. I always share the story about how I first came into activism, and that was being in the fifth grade. So I'm going to state my age because it's important. 40 years old as of last 2 weeks ago. So I thank God that I made it to see this. So when I was in the 5th grade, and it was 1995, and my teacher in Dallas, where I grew up, it was an all-black school, and she happened to be a white teacher. She said this was right when Lewis, Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan did the Million Man March. And at this time, 10 years old, I had no idea of any of that, what it was about or anything. But she said to us, all blacks need to go back to Africa. And I was in the 5th grade. She said it to all, and that story is still on the web, is on the internet. And she told us that we should go back to Africa. And she went on to talk about how students at other schools are more, at white schools specifically, are smarter than us and all of this. And in that moment, I remember standing up and saying, no, we are smart. And, we're from America. What do you mean? And that story stuck with me, obviously, because that kind of experience will stick with you. But also because it was the first time I stood up and, I guess you could say, gave protest to the teacher, along with other students in the class. And so that was 5th grade. A year later, I started, fell in love, got introduced to theater and fell in love with it. And at that same time is when my mom, my mom was a single parent of 5 children, and I'm the second of 5. And she had me when she was 16 years old. And so by the time she was 25, she had 5 children. And as a result, she was unable at that time to finish high school. She's gone on to do so now, but so it was minimum wage jobs and things like this. And she promised she would pray to God and say, bless, if you bless me with a house, because we had moved, I went to like 8 or 9 different elementary schools. And she said, if you bless me with a house, God, I promise to give my kids back to you, because we weren't going to church or anything at that point. And we got a house built from the ground up. And she kept her commitment, because from that moment forward, we were the first ones at the church and the last ones to leave every week for everything. And so those things came together: activism, church, and theater, all within a 1 to 2 year frame. And to me, it carried on throughout high school, throughout college, and so forth. And that's what those are 3 things I really have stuck with me throughout my young adulthood all the way up until now.
Yes, yes, yes. I was a single mom as well. I was a teen mom. And I think we were interfaith by default. We went to synagogue on Friday nights. We went to the Methodist church on Saturdays for the Sons of Singles event. On Sundays, we were Baptist, because, Baptist churches run a little bit long. And it was like any help that I could get raising and feeding my son,
Yes.
in addition to being able to just be connected to trying to understand what a life of poverty might mean for somebody who is experiencing the world in a different way. So I had, and in it, I was always faithful. I always grew up, going to church, and I was a rainbow girl and all those things. But it was really being in all of those different institutions of multi-religious faith expressions, where it allowed me to make sense of the world in a new way. And my son, although not necessarily practicing in any of the expressions, has a deep understanding of religious understandings and is coming into his own advocacy now. So he didn't have a 5th grade experience like yours, but also been dealing with some of the racism and some of the I don't know what the phobia would be, but my son is 6'5", 300 some pounds. Like, he's just a big dude. And so having to deal with moving the world as a triracial man, you know, who's smarter than most.
Yes, yes.
You know, yeah. So God bless your mom. And I love that you were there from the early part to the late part.
You're right, right. It's crazy when I turned 40, my sister called to say happy birthday. They're all in Texas. And she said, "Wait, how old is mom?" I said, "She's 56." She's like, that sounds strange. For mom to be 56, you to be 40, you know, and my brother, I'm the second oldest, so I have well, my brother is a year older than me. He passed away 2 years ago. But
Mm.
so, you know, it's just life though, you know.
It is, and it helped to fuel that voice for you and all of that. I wanted to say thank you for sharing your personal story and being so open and vulnerable with it. That's really what this space I try and hope that we can cultivate collectively. Um, so in your upbringing,
Yes.
you know, with the racism that you experience within your school settings, with your mom having to go through all of that, and then you really, I mean, even just being the second oldest, you were still raising your siblings, right? How is it that you found your voice, whether it be the pastoring and the art to reach people to share the message? So when was it? You said in, I think you said sixth grade is when you were like, I fell in love with theater. But what
Yeah.
does that mean in who you are today?
Thank you. Yes. So, yes, sixth grade, I fell in love with theater. And I fell in love with theater because I was in a community I was just called the way we called it. I grew up in the hood. So so if you didn't have all the newest Nikes, Jordans, whatever, you were picked on and you were seen as voiceless. And so that was the group I was a part of, the voiceless, overlooked, if you will. However, because I started going to church with my mom, hearing the word from the preacher, it was a Baptist church, and the way he was the pastor would tell the biblical stories and narratives, I could understand it then, and that stuck with me. And so merging how I saw storytelling in church versus also what I was learning about theater in the school, which was primarily a Black school and middle school. And I was also in school, like I said, I was in the voiceless category until I started doing theater. And it was like that was a space where I found my voice, because now you're on stage, you have lines, you're a main character, and everyone's attention is on you. And to me, that stood out. And if you don't mind, can I show up something really quick? This PowerPoint, I prepared a few things just to kind of give people a little knowledge, help people understand who I am and what I do. So, um, okay, here we go. So, at the heart of it all, I consider myself a preacher. I embrace storytelling as a sacred calling that aligns deeply with the mandate of Micah 6:8. Um, and what that means to me is I really just yes, I'm a preacher and have served as a executive director of ministries, pastor of justice recently at First Institutional Baptist Church, associate pastor in Denver, Colorado, and like I said, executive director of ministries in Dallas. So I've been in ministry my whole life, and but I see myself as a minister, but the storytelling, the education that I was able to gain, and all of these things work as a way of as expressions of how living out the gospel for me. It's like, let's not, in my mind, let's not just talk about it in front of the four walls of this church, in this building, which is important, but how do we put it in practice in the streets and in the places like where I said I grew up in? Me graduating high school, oh my gosh, let me tell you, it felt like you would have thought I graduated with a PhD. I became the first person in my household to graduate high school. Um, and then in the day I got the letter, and let me also say, I scored nearly a perfect score on the SAT. So when I was going off to college, when I got that acceptance letter, I wish we had videos of how the whole family turned up, just because it was like as if we hit the lottery. But so all of that to say, all of those experiences to me, however, ties to me being a preacher at heart, because I always told God, Lord, if you allow me to go to college, if you allow me to go to school and get an education, I, like my mother said, I just mimicked her. I said, if you allow me to get an education and soar in that, I will give all that knowledge, all those degrees, all those skills back to you. And so God allowed me to do so. God allowed me to, as of December 2021, I became the first African American male to earn a PhD from Arizona State University. And upon getting that, I was also uh, got the award for most outstanding grad student. And that's the second university that happened that I did it also at Southern Methodist University, most outstanding grad student. And I know this will be a another discussion, but I do want to parenthetically say, when I was in working on my master's at SMU, I had strayed away from theater, but it was a Black professor there. Her name is Dr. Joki McElroy. She is the one who brought me back to it. She's a renowned theater um, playwright and storyteller, and she brought me back in. And at SMU, it was there that because I studied at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem while at SMU for like a study abroad, and I studied traveled the U.S. Southland studying the civil rights movement on 3 different occasions. And because of those experiences, I came back to the States and Dallas while still a grad student, first year in the grad program, master's program. I voluntarily became homeless in order to see what it means to how the homeless are treated or mistreated, and what are the myths that are associated with homelessness. I did that for a year, um, and in doing so, we're recruiting students to do it for a weekend or a day and things like that. And by the time I graduated, that's one of the reasons I received that award. But so this is just telling you some of the things I do. And these pictures, the one on the far left is me teaching at Princeton Theological Seminary, where I was the first, and I was the inaugural um, theater and theology residents. So I was teaching classes there. One I did was this one. The first one I did was Defying Joy, a storytelling and dramatization course on joy embedded in Blackness. And then I would go on and do other courses following that year. But then in the middle is a cast of us doing storytelling productions at Southern Methodist University. And on the far right is just us at First Institutional Baptist Church here in Phoenix, Arizona. So I've been doing the same things that I've always done in 3 different states: Texas, Colorado, and now Arizona. And it's important to me to say I illuminate represented narratives that engages with history, honors cultural heritage, and foster collective remembrance. So those things matter to me, and that underrepresented mainly because of my own story, of my upbringing. And as I started going to college, I said, oh man, there are certain classes in college, on college campuses. They, even where there is diversity, I learned that there are many different classes, status wise, social classes is what I'm talking about. And there were fewer people from the level of stratification that I was from. So when I noticed that, I started becoming more interested in how can I help amplify stories from those who are on the lower or the lowest level of stratification, or what Isabel Wilkerson would refer to as caste um, system. And so that's pretty much what I do. I collaborate with community members. So I go from state to state, community to community, and I work with the people within those communities, hearing their stories and doing productions for community dialogue and for social change, um, and just to honor and celebrate what the history and the people that are there. And so that's who I am. That's what I do, just so you can get a understanding of the things I've done here recently, very recently, so we can all be on the same, come to the same, come with the same knowledge to the conversation.
Yes. Thank you for that. I'm going to have some follow-up questions for
Yes,
you on that.
yes.
Can you tell me, like, real quick, did you find that artistic expression changed, like, if at all, in the geographic locations you found yourself, right? Did you find that art was appreciated differently and or resisted differently in those geographic areas?
That is a very good question. I've I have found differences, and I have to think about the words resisted or received, but I will say that in each state and community I was with, it was received, but how it was received has been different. For instance, in Dallas, it was received, and it was not just merely received, it was embraced and even embodied. People wanted to emulate it and take it to their own communities and do the same work. And the people in the communities I was doing that with in Dallas were expressive, expressed so much gratitude for that, us being in the community doing that kind of thing. In Colorado, Denver specifically, where I was living for 4 years, it was different in the sense that this is why I mention classism a lot. Denver was a different class, at least the community I was within. I served as an associate pastor at this time in Denver at one of the largest Black churches in Denver. And people supported the arts and people applauded it and they showed up. But the emulation of it, what they pulled away and took with them to do something with, that call to action wasn't as strong as it was in Dallas. It was more of an appreciation of the art itself as opposed to a call to action. And I think class plays a very big role in that, because in the communities in Dallas, it was to people, like I said, where I was from. And
Mm.
those kinds of communities, at that time at least, was with most people didn't go to college. Most people didn't. Graduating high school was a big goal and a big celebration if you could do it. And so that was the community I was working with in Dallas. In Denver, it I mean, most everybody you met, seemingly, it seems like, had a master's degree, two of them. At that time, I was living in Colorado. It was the second most educated state in the nation after Massachusetts. So you could see that difference. And then coming here to Arizona, I feel like it's again appreciated, embraced, and applauded. I see a mix of all of it, but but yeah, those some of the differences.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think, like, what I heard you say was, in like one region, it was more of a, like, we appreciate it, but the call to action changed. It wasn't quite there as what it was in that other part. And I'm wondering, because I did hear you say like working with community specifically within church, the church's building and beyond, we think about in call to action in regards to the arts, how is it that you advise us on doing more of an, I don't want to say, where you're not telling the stories of and for the people, that you're empowering them, like, so where's that fine line of like, because even with our best intentions, right, like, I do a lot of work around prison ministry and prison reform work, and I often refer to a really good friend of mine who was sentenced to life at 14, and so I have those conversations, but I'm careful not to share their story
Yes.
while also inspiring people to take action. So how do you find that fine line?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question. The community work I do is with the community, with those. So the stories that we're talking about are the stories of the people who are also either presenting the story themselves. So we incorporate them in the devising of the stories and the production of it. And if they don't want to be in the production, they are okay with letting their voices be heard, their words be used. And sometimes we use different names, but we inform the people that these are real stories, real words, but different names. And so when we come to that, uh, it's always about working with and for and inviting them in the process of it all. If without an invitation into the process, I feel like it's extracting from a community for for your own company's gain or your personal gain. And it never works out in that way. And so yeah, it's about consent through it all, through the process. Um, and that's one of the things that I have a community-based theater company called Sleeveless Acts, ACTS, Sleeveless Acts. And and it's sleeveless, called Sleeveless Acts because it has the idea that as people roll up your sleeves to get to work, we don't need sleeves. We're sleeveless because we're always at work within communities that are in need. And when we do that kind of work, we here now, Phoenix at least, I don't know, do you remember Calvin C. Good, long standing councilman? um we did a production and that honored him, and he was there to see it. But before we did the actual production, we talked to him several times, we interviewed him, we asked, hey, is it okay? And his granddaughter participated in the production as well. But we use people from the community and the individuals that we're talking about if we can. And all the while, we have their permission through it all.
Yeah, I love that. For anyone not from the Arizona Phoenix area, Calvin was attended the historical George Washington Carver High School, was really integral for a long time at making sure that high school avoided demolition and actually became a museum. And actually, the first all Black, I think he played or was a part of the first all Black high school basketball team that competed against the first all Latino basketball team from Globe, Arizona. And so there's a lot of that history there. So that's exciting. Thank you, Danta, for
Yeah.
sharing that. What project are you working on now, or which one do you think I kind of like really was like, I gotta get Danta to talk about this, because you kind of pulled some stuff out. We'll talk about this a little bit later. Is how do we get people? How do we invite people to use what they have, right? So we'll talk about that. But tell me about your latest project.
Okay. So I am so excited. There are It's a lot of late projects that I'm having, but let me just let me tell you about some very recent ones that I did, and I have images here to show. Um,
All right, while you
That's
do
it.
that real quick, I'll let folks know if you have a question, feel free to pop that into the Q&A feature. That's that dialogue bubble with the question mark. We'll get an opportunity to come to those at the end. Go ahead, Don.
So recently I did a protest theater. There was a call from ministers across the nation about withholding funds from Walmart, Target, and Amazon. Uh, it was during Lenten season. So for that period of time, they wanted us to withhold funds because of these companies did roll back on their policies for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I was a part of telling people, hey, for this period, please just don't shop at these places because of um, they rolled back their DEI policies. Then I started thinking, what more could I do? So I rented this truck, this U-Haul truck, the cheapest one, the $19 truck, 10 footer. And I got these posters from the dollar store. I don't know if maybe a dollar each or less than that, but I got several of them. And me and my two little ones, 6-year-old and 4-year-old, started creating signs, just signs, a call to conscience. And I wrote a skit, a 8-minute monologue, as if I'm in the form of a letter. So it's called A Letter from King, Dr. Martin Luther King, Cesar Chavez, and Malcolm X. It was an imaginary letter that if these three came together, writing us from eternity, telling us to hold back our funds for this small period of time just to send a message about unity and about inclusion. And I set that inside of this U-Haul, the U-Haul up as if it's a 1960 street protest kind of a scene. And I stood behind that podium with my bullhorn, and I read the letter. I went to Cesar Chavez Park. You see the part of that in this picture. I went to Walmart. That's me in this picture. And I went to Target. And each place I switched it up some because the environment required a change up. So at Walmart parking lot, I could be in my truck and just talk to people and pass out the full letter. I had one letter in English, one letter in Spanish, and I was just handing them out. And I realized I couldn't read the full script as like I'm on stage. I would give snippets, sound bites of certain parts of the script that I wrote, and it draw people in. And I got a chance to talk to them about it, about withholding their funds. Some people turned around. Thank you for doing this. I didn't know about the protest for just this period of time, but I'll be a part of it. I went to Cesar Chavez Park where I was able to do the full letter monologue. I went to barbershops, and they allowed me to do the full monologue. And I mean, I had switched jackets, every character that I spoke with when I was, and so yeah, when I went to Target, I didn't do it in the parking lot. I didn't use the truck. I went inside and with a handful of letters, English and Spanish, and say, hey, is it okay if I share this letter with you? Most of the time, what is it about? And I just gave them a quick synopsis and gave them letter like and told them you don't have to read it now, just read it later on. And so I never told people put those groceries down, put that shirt back, nothing like that. Like I understand, and even at Walmart, I understand you coming out with your groceries today, me on the bullhorn right here. But in the future, in the next 20 days, in the next 15 days, can you withhold your funds from these stores? We have, and Fry's, we have Safeway, whatever the case was. And that's one way I use activism, or arts as activism, using my gift and calling to do justice, um, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. And if you want me to share the next thing, or
Yeah,
is
go
that
ahead. Go, keep
okay?
going. Show us all
The
your pride.
no, but this last thing I'll share from this is um on March 29th, I went to, oh, there it is right here, to Sherman, Texas. I had been directing a play over Zoom from January or February all the way through March. And Sherman, Texas, they wanted to commemorate the life of a guy named George Hughes. They wanted to acknowledge the history of many of us know about the Tulsa massacre in 1921, but what happened in Sherman, Texas in 1930 was synonymous to what happened in Tulsa. There was a prominent Black community. They were just like Black Wall Street, in a very middle class, to be honest, Black community. And when they heard of George Hughes, um, and it was said that alleged that he raped a woman, his boss's wife, when he went to her house to get the money from his paycheck, and her husband wasn't there. She said that he raped her. Um, he was arrested, taken down to the county courthouse, and when he got to the courthouse, he never got to see a trial because a mob of 5,000 came to the courthouse, surrounded it, and demanded his body. They took him out of the court, put him in the basement of the courthouse for safety. But what happened was the mob threw, basically set the courthouse on fire, and he was burned inside. And when he was burned inside, they dragged his body from the vault of the courthouse, his dead body, tied it to the back of a car, drove it to the Black community, that wealthy community, lynched him there, and tore and burned down the entire Black businesses in that community in 1920, in May 9th, 1930. The play that we did was called The Ninth Day of May, and it talked vaguely of, it mentioned the George Hughes's lynching, but more so it dealt with how what happened to George Hughes was impacting the entire Black community. That so that a little girl, Cassie, could not graduate high school. She couldn't attend her prom, because after that riot, things shut down. But on the flip side, people like William J. Durham became famously known because he was the only Black attorney in Sherman at that time. And after that happened, he and Thurgood Marshall worked together to integrate the University of Texas Law School, and other major things that happened. So I then used my gift and said, okay, how can I help tell this story on stage? And when we went to Sherman, Texas, we got to tell it on stage the same day they had the unveiling of that historic marker at the new county courthouse. So yeah, two things that I've been working on lately.
Oh, that is beautiful, and two separate, like very, very different
Yes,
things. You
very
know, I'm
different.
I'm curious, like how what did you see come from those, both internally and externally? What and some of the other things that you've done, where have you seen change, and how have people kind of been either responding by getting involved, or what?
Yes. From there, yes. So there was immediate change with what I did at Walmart,
Yeah.
Target, the barbershops, the parks. That was immediate change in the sense that um, people on spot, some of the people said, you know what, I'm not shopping here today. I didn't know that. Thank you. I was going to go in there, but I'll go somewhere else. There was other changes where people were a little bit more delayed. People already had their goods and they said, thank you for this, and I'll consider this. But it put it on their mind. Some people were totally unaware that about the DEI rollbacks altogether. Um, and Target is more specific because Target had made a pledge to give, I think, $2 billion to Black communities by December 2025. But because of the rollbacks that happened in January, they now didn't have to no longer stay with their commitment to Black communities. So people today are still boycotting Target. People still go to Amazon or Walmart, but Target is one that people are really still fighting against. So those were more immediate. What happened when Sherman, Texas, being there on site, on the court, on the grounds of the courthouse, the same location that 90 some odd years ago that a lynching had taken place. It That one was different because what I saw more than anything was an emotional pull on myself and others, but also it's the kind of thing that you don't know what's going to happen from that until some time has passed. Um, but you could see the people who showed up at the courthouse show up at the play and begin to have conversation. And
Hmm.
that's the first step, is the dialogue has started. And that's why I say one of the things one kind of theater I do is theater for community dialogue, because you
Yeah.
can't really begin to see each other or others unless you are engaged in that kind of dialogue. And that's what we had at the end of the production. We opened it up for time for questions and answers, but also comments and responses. And that was
Yeah. Yeah, art, it elicits emotion. It's why it's there, right? And so to even have an illicit conversation post is a huge opportunity, that each of us can get engaged in. It's more than just having, well, let's just have a community conversation. Not everybody feels brave, courageous, or safe enough in a space to have a conversation, especially if it's in a building that they haven't been to, if it's a religious institution that, oh, they normally practice that way. They have the rainbow flag, or they have the, whatever. I don't feel that I can be my full self there. So using art as an opportunity in which to spark those conversations in unique ways is what, as a former teacher, I would say is that backdoor learning, right? It's those backdoor learning opportunities. You go in, you're like, okay, I'm gonna see. Oh, I did not know I was going to walk away with that message, right?
right.
So,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, and so I think that eliciting, that those emotions are also important, right? And so when I'm gonna pair two questions together. What are some hints and tools that you can give to our faith communities that say think the problem is too big, that they don't have a PhD in theater production and or
Yeah.
even playwriting? They didn't go to the Arizona Storytelling Institute, so they don't have storytelling skills. But they painted once, in an art class, at the retirement community or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Where is it? What advice can you give us if, one, we don't think we're skilled enough, two, if the problem is too big, or three, like all I have is the stuff that's in the closet in the youth nursery room that's been there for 8 years,
Yeah.
a lot of cotton balls. That's what I've known. By the way, y'all, my church office is in the former nursery. So there's, for whatever reason, a lot of cotton balls. So what could I turn those cotton balls into? So what is some advice that you can give? And then thinking about that, I'll come back and ask, when an emotional response is elicited, how is it that our pastoral sides can come in and care for those?
That's good.
Easy questions, I know, to answer.
So first of all, I would say I'm glad, this reminds me of the words of Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King said, um, anybody can serve. You don't have to have a degree to serve. And that's what I would say. When you think about what can you do, if I'm not creative, I'm not that theatrical or storytelling kind of a person, I'm not a crafty person, what could I do? Don't think of it as a art assignment. Think of it as a service. What service can you render? Whatever service you can render, let that be the thing that leads you. For instance, um, uh, Ellie, when we started, you asked me if you got something in the kids' room or something you want to pull out. These three things says it's just library cards. One for me and my two little ones. Now I know what's going on with libraries right now, but that's another conversation. But I want to say, but I want to say, um, this is simple. It didn't cost me a dime, and although I have a physical car, I drove I took my two little ones on a train ride to the library, made it a whole adventure. use the restroom first, because you know how little kids do. And, and then bring your backpack with your snacks. We're going to go to the library. And you're going to read books first, then you can get on the computer. Because you know when you go to the public library, they want to just go on the computer. And so something that simple makes a big difference. So you see things as a service, like how can I render what is needed, and what can I render? Even if that's passing out food, you say that doesn't take a talent. It doesn't. But passing out food, helping um, give food to those who are in need, is a small task that makes a tremendous difference. And so that's how you want to do. Don't think about how can you wow yourself and others. When you start thinking about how can you serve, the more you serve, the more ideas will populate, because then people will say, I need you in this area, or can you do this? And you don't have to say yes, but it gives you more and more ideas. And take what you already have. Like we said for this whole day, use what you got, whatever that is, however little you think that is. Listen, like Ellie, I heard you say you're a teacher, and I'm a teacher at heart. I teach at ASU, but what I decided to do, I during the COVID years, I said, you know what, I'm going to start teaching a class called Civil Rights Monologues, and I'm going to make it available on Zoom, and and we're going to go on it's going to be a week long, and we're going to go on an imaginary trip across the U.S. Southland on a Greyhound bus, which is synonymous to the Freedom Riders of 1961. Um, and we went on this imaginary bus and to Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, Memphis, Tennessee, back to Arizona. And each day, there were 21 students signed up from 3 different states, Texas, Colorado, and Arizona. And they signed up. The call only went out 2 days. And they signed up 21 students from the youngest was 9, the oldest was 17. 21 students, 3 different states. When they signed up, we went on a civil rights pilgrimage, because I actually did that 3 times. I said I could just use my own life experience and bring it to them. And guess what? At every stop, because I know other professors, when we stopped in Mississippi, I had a scholar whose focus is on that history, civil rights history in Mississippi. They popped up at that time. Welcome to Mississippi, kids. Let's get started. And gave a 10-minute, 15-minute presentation. And do you know, at the end of it all, the kids had to write a 2-minute monologue about, from the perspective of whichever figure resonated with them the most. And that was just me using what I had. What did I have? I had a computer, I had internet, and I have experiences going on a monologue, and I had connections. Let me put these things together, and boom. When you start to think like that, you would be amazed at how many people will pitch in. Oh, I could do this. I can also join in. I can also teach on that and help out. And it became an amazing experience.
Yeah, I love that you've documented this stuff too, Dante, too, because like, we know we've touched on and we've talked previously about, there's the history that's being erased, there's history that's being rewritten, there's books that are being banned, there are libraries that are being threatened, there's early reading program, like the list could go on and on and on, right? And yet every one of our houses of worship, every one of our congregations and churches can help to be the archivists, the
Yes,
librarians, the
yes,
creatives in the
yes,
community to help foster
yes,
as just small acts.
yes. And look, even with that class I said I held on Zoom, guess what? At that time, I stayed in this 1 bedroom. I was a PhD student, so it was money was hard to come by. But but the church said you can use our libraries, which has internet access, all of this. So I was there from that duration of that week, using using my using that as space. And And if you, because it's 124 on my side, can I show
Go
you?
ahead,
I got to show, because
please.
people want to know what this looks like, what I'm talking about. It sounds amazing. I'm just going to share a brief clip of what this looks like. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. This was day 3 of the civil rights.
On the road, please type in the chat some of the things you see, or you can speak it out loud as well. As we get ready, this light is the longest light ever here. I hate turning this corner because that light is so long. Nice, Maya.
The kids
Parked
are
cars. We see parked cars. What else do you see as we get ready to leave Alabama, where we have to drive through the city in order to get to the highway?
Lots of buildings.
Lots of buildings, yes. There's a lot of buildings here. Hospitals, yes. Somebody said parking lots. You see that flag? She wasn't going to ride the bus anymore, was because one day she put her money on the front of the bus to ride it, and then you had to step off and walk to get in, go through the back doors to have a seat, because blacks couldn't sit at the front of the bus. So she put her money in at the front of the bus. She got down the stairs, walked out all the way to go to the back, to enter the door at the back of the bus.
So what I just did there, I put a video. Listen, this is going to bless y'all. What I did, I said, okay, I'm going to find a video of someone, a random video on YouTube of someone driving through Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama. I used that video in my class as if we're on this Greyhound bus, we're driving through Alabama. I'm engaging the students. Tell me what you see. Point it out, point it out. And as they point it out, that's just getting them riled up and ready. And as we're driving, I say, anybody know about Georgia, Gilmore? Georgia Gilmore was a black cook in the 1960s, in 1950s. She funded and fueled the civil rights movement. And I'm educating them about these civil rights icons, not Martin Luther King, not Rosa Parks, not the ones we know, but the lesser known, because my calling deals with the voiceless, those who we really don't know. And that class was about Georgia Gilmore, and Joanne Robinson, both who are from Alabama during the 60s, who had a tremendous influence on the movement. As a class, taking this road trip through Alabama, I didn't record driving myself through Alabama. It's already on the internet. All I did was merge what I had. And once you find out what you have, you're going to start to see other things that are already in existence, that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you can put it all together to make what you need. So that's what I want to encourage you to know.
Yes, I love that too, Dante, because like I know as a former teacher, I would always have my students when teaching poetry and stuff like that, I would always have my students go out and just document what you see. I want you to walk around the block a couple times. I want you to walk around the block the opposite direction a couple times. What is it that you notice? What is it that is missing? What is it that you see an excessive amount of, right? They were mapping their neighborhoods and were able to gain a narrative about where it is that they live visually, that, sometimes, look, I have a cactus outside my door that I did not know the javelina were eating because I wasn't paying attention. And I happened to go out and there's a big old javelina mark out of it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this cactus has been here 3 weeks. I wonder how long, I've not noticed my own landscape in order to see something change, or either, to map it out. We do have a question here. It says, what was your dissertation on? I'm trying to find a good area to study that brings together arts, justice, and divinity. Because I know for me, my work in seminary was using the arts and humanities to engage in interfaith dialogue, how the arts led to the conversation around faith expressions. And this was in the Philadelphia area, so there was a lot of Judeo-Christian type troubles there at one point, and so we used the arts to engage in those conversations. But I'm curious, what was your dissertation on, and what do you think is Any suggestions you can give?
Yeah, mine's was I wrote my dissertation as an autoethnography because I wrote it during the years of George Floyd. That's when I was dissertating. And so the title was Developing a BIPOC Equity Performance Coalition at an Arts Institution. And that's because I led a major, a major, uh, a major, what would I call it? um, revolution, if you will. So, for the lack of words, I'll say that for now, at Arizona State University. And it led to so many wonderful changes at the university on the arts in the arts college as well as the university. And so anyway, I documented those experiences for that year and a half, almost 2 years of work. And I use liberation theologies liberation theologies as the foundation for my dissertation practice. What does it mean to use to use MLK's 6 nonviolent principles merged with William J. Barber's 14 Principles of Moral Fusion Coalition, and merged with Emily Towns's and Emily Towns's womanist theology. So all of those things together, how those religious liberation tools can inform us in our present world.
Yes. So there's lots of opportunities. I know a lot of seminaries, a lot of just universities in general have been more flexible in if you have a good counselor. And this goes the same with the therapist, with the doctor, with a fitness trainer, with whatever it is. If it don't fit, it's okay to say, no, I'm going to try somebody else. But getting a good counselor within your university setting and tell them, just kind of share, this is what I want to do in the world. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I'm concerned with. That, name your fears and name your victories that you've had in life, because while you may not hear or see the story in your own head or body, somebody else might see it for you. And so having a good counselor is really, really good. And then mapping. I hear Dante, you said it a lot this entire time, is really you went out and kind of got a better understanding of where it was that you grew up, where it was that you lived in the different situations. And when you didn't know, you put yourself there, like when you were with the communities that were underhoused, right? So becoming familiar with where you are, and then how you exist in those spaces, and then what change you want to see bringing others with you. That's what I heard you say today, Dante.
Yes, you named it exactly.
Yeah. Oh, what a gift it has been to have you here today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Are there any final thoughts or words that you'd like to share before we head out?
No, I just want to say thank you all for allowing me to be in this space to share. I'm excited about sharing things that the way God is using me and has been using me. And if you ever want to reach out and locate me or see some of the work that I'm doing, you can always follow me on social media, or you can just email, reach out either of these ways. Sleeveless Acts, and there is contact information on the website. But yeah, thank you all again for allowing me in this space.
That is great. Yeah. And if for some reason you don't get a chance to write these down because you're driving, please, safety first. You're more than welcome to reply to the email that I sent this. Actually, it was our tech team that sent it in behalf of me. So thank you to our tech team. Go ahead and reply back to that, and I'll make sure that you get connected to Reverend Dr. Dante. I want to thank you again for joining us today. If you were able to join us live, fantastic. And if you're watching this at a later time, that's fantastic as well, because you are taking time to see what it is and learn and nurture your soul in the things that make us, alive during this time. So I want to thank you, Dante, for joining us today. For those who are joining us virtually, I want to invite you for our next webinar, which is in just a few days, Thursday, May 15th at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, for our regularly scheduled Nurture the Soul. We're going to be hearing from pastors and leaders within 3D different geographic, small town and rural settings within the United Church of Christ to explore immigration during this complicated political and theological time. During our time together, we're going to learn more about how current immigration policies are impacting these small and rural settings, what our scriptures call us to be to one another, and how our UCC polity can inform our work to push back on the hateful rhetoric and policies that seeks to strip the dignity and humanity of those migrating to the United States. So we hope that you join us on Thursday. Please join us anytime on YouTube. You can share these webinars often, and we hope you do. And now I'm going to turn it over to you, Reverend Dr. Dante McGilvery. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can you take us out?
Yes, yes. God, we come to you. Thank you once again for allowing us to be here and sharing this space together. Thank you for nurture for our soul, for your soul. Thank you to all those who are a part of this, who make this happen, and those who are joining us and will watch later. We pray, God, that you will continue to speak to our soul and let us know, Lord, that there's something in us, always something in us that could produce something great and mighty in this world, in our community, and one person's life, Lord, and that is significant. Thank you, Lord, for letting us know that that you rejoice over one soul, God. And so we should also rejoice when we help and are helpful to one individual. We thank you for this time once again, and I pray your blessings upon everyone here today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Siblings in Christ, if you are moved by this conversation, if what's been offered here has helped enhance your ministry or has nurtured your soul for the journey, please consider donating to the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Your support will help to provide programs like this, which are an essential part of our ministries in the United Church of Christ. Thank you for your support. Be blessed on your journey and know that you are not alone. We are holding you in prayer. Amen.